Good morning and welcome to our UUFC service. We're glad you're joining us as we gather our community in spirit with hope and determination to build a better community and world. If you're visiting with us, please send us an email at info@uufc.org. We'd love to hear from you and know that you were visiting with us today. My name is David Sanders and I'm the 2020 president for the UUFC board. And I have some announcements that I'd like to share with you as part of this service. During the upcoming weeks, as we're in transition from our current settled minister to our interim minister, please make sure to read the Weekly Connection newsletter. It will contain a lot of information about happenings with UUFC, and also as a special part of the newsletters during this transition period, each one of our board members will be contributing a letter to share certain aspects about our shared ministry with the congregation. So please make sure you read those and hope you enjoy them. I know if you're bothered by the recent events, as I have been, around the deaths of unarmed Black men, mostly in our community, I invite you to join us for a gathering this afternoon, June 7th, 5 p.m., on the church grounds. With appropriate social distancing, we will be holding a vigil for George Floyd and all of those who lost their lives due to the systemic racism that pervades our nation. Please join us as we stand together with those of like mind who seek to build the beloved community. While most of you have not met our interim minister, Reverend Christina, she is working in the background, taking a lot of time before she even joins our community, to learn about our fellowship, to learn our history, as well as to learn about our larger Clemson community. So please know that she is working in the background to get to know us as we work to get to know her. Many of us have wanted a picture directory for years for our community. One of our members, John Hoskin, has graciously agreed to help create one for us, but he needs your help. So far, he only has about 30 pictures, and I'd encourage you to take the time to send him a picture and whatever information you would like to have in this photo directory. The explanation and contact information is in the Weekly Connection. And today is the day that we are keenly aware of our need to gather in spirit. So I invite you to take a few moments to put down our pain, our anguish, and our fear. And for just a moment, imagine yourself removing that layer of turmoil from your mind and your heart. Put it down. It's okay to take a few moments to gather strength for the living of our lives. So simply breathe in and breathe out. Breathe slowly and deliberately. For in this week, we are more aware of the precious nature of our gift of life and breath. Breathe in and breathe out.
Our opening reading this morning is number 457 by Edward Everett Hale. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. as I light the chalice of our faith, let us join together in reciting our affirmation. We gather together in a spirit of love with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another.
We gather today with celebrations and concerns. It seems in the last days that the concerns we have about the world feel overwhelming. Our hearts are torn because not only for the death of George Floyd, but the acknowledgement that his death is just the latest experience, the latest reckoning with the institutionalized racism in our society. And we can say those two words, but when you're talking about people's lives and people's children, then the pain of the reality of the brokenness of our society becomes even more plain. It's been interesting the last few days to see the number of comments about George Floyd as he was dying, calling on his mother, and the reality that when mothers are called into action, they have power. When fathers are called into action, they have power. Part of the way that we can begin to move out of our own confusion about what we can do and what we can be in this reality that's already been there is for us to realize that we don't have the time and energy to feel shame or regret. We're on, hopefully, a new journey to acknowledge and admit the ways that we inadvertently, naively, consciously have contributed to the pain and suffering of others in our community, maybe even in our families. I think our original concept when we had the courage to envision the Clemson Area Pledge to End Racism was that the most important work that those of us who are white, our work is personal, is to begin to see where our eyes have been covered. Our vision has not been clear. We have not seen our sisters and brothers truly as our sisters and brothers. And so on this day, I invite us to the courageous act to begin to look at our thoughts and actions to realize that there are many ways, if we were more awake, that we would be able to engender more compassion, more support for people of color, that we could truly be allies. We talk about the human family a lot, but we can only be a family when we see each other's suffering, when we see each other's dreams, and offer support and compassion and love to one another. So we have work ahead of us. It's courageous work. It's self-exploration that may break us open. I hope that happens. I invite us to examine our actions, our thoughts, so that we can put aside the ways that we cause pain and suffering to others. This is the only way that we can truly find peace. And yes, this is on top of our anxiety about the continuing experiences of the pandemic. And yet, in the midst of all of our anxiety, each of us is aware of how fortunate we are to be living in this part of the country, to have supportive friends and family, to have a community. And as heavy as the world is, it offers us the hope of a new way forward. Not just for us, but for our children, our grandchildren, their children. Even if we don't have children, we have our fellowship children, and we want them to receive the most of life's blessings and the least of the world's sufferings. And yet, the world they will inherit begins with our actions and our courage to build a world that truly embodies our highest values. And particularly this week, as we have watched some of our young people graduate from high school and college in whatever form and shape schools have been able to social distance, we are aware of the possibilities, the world that they can help build. Let us give them a solid foundation that includes all young people. One of the most poignant pictures I've seen in the last week was a young Black man standing, buildings burning, across the street, and he was standing proudly in his cap and gown. Let us build a world, a better world. Not for ourselves so much, although we would love to enjoy the luxury of a peaceful and loving world. Let us altruistically commit ourselves to building a world for all the children, all mothers' children. So I invite us, with all that is on our hearts today, to take a few moments of silent prayer and meditation, to hold in our heart not just our anxiety, our anger, our horror, but also our possibilities for transformation and renewal. Spirit of life, our hearts are gathered in our concern, our horror at what is happening in our nation. But most of all, what is happening to our sisters and brothers whose lives are at risk because of the color of their skin, who have died because of the color of their skin, who have died because of the poverty in this nation. And often people of color are those who suffer the most. We're also aware that we both need to feel what we're feeling. And we also cannot stay in those feelings, because that would drain away our hope, our vision of a better world. Let us feel our feelings of horror and anger and sadness and confusion, and choose to move through those feelings and into a deeper place of commitment to be part of building a system that honors and celebrates each person in this nation. Let us choose to be people who, in every way that we are able, can dismantle racism that is here in our community. We know it. We live with it. Let us speak to it openly and clearly. And we give thanks for those who are on a different front line, those who are peacefully protesting, those who have power to change policies and policing in our nation, those who give hope and sustenance to those who are suffering in mind, body, and spirit. May we commit ourselves to becoming healers, healers of our own conditioning, our own teachings, that they may be excised from our being. May we become healers who build bridges of understanding, to hear, to be allies with those who are suffering. May we become healers so that our society, which is so broken, can be mended, can be transformed, so that a better community and a better nation can protect every mother's children. This we ask in the name of all that is sacred. Amen.
When I was a kid, we played outside all the time. My mama insisted upon it. And no matter what the Wisconsin temperature was outside, you would find my sister Christine and I running around, getting together with neighborhood friends, playing games, and having fun. Sledding, skating, tag, swimming, building forts, kickball, hide and seek, climbing fruit trees, hanging upside down from the swing set, even laying in the grass reading. Sometimes, of course, it would rain. If there was thunder and lightning or winds whipping the driving rain into a frenzy, we were, of course, safely inside with our Barbie dolls. But if it happened to be a gentle, warm kind of rain, Christine and I would head outside with our umbrellas. We go down the hill of our front yard and start skipping along the length of the sidewalk. Then, giggling, we tip our umbrella slightly to the side to let the rain hit our face or arms. And then we tip the umbrellas even more and more and more until the umbrellas were abandoned altogether, and so that we could dance fully in the rain. Who knows how many rain songs we made up during those joyous moments? I'd glance up the hill to see Mama looking through the big front window of the living room, watching and smiling. Did a favorite childhood pastime come to mind while I was sharing that story? I hope so. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "It is a happy talent to know how to play." But what is it about play that makes it play? According to UU minister Reverend Anthony Macker, in a 2015 UU World Magazine article titled "The Wisdom of Play," he pointed out that there were 5 crucial elements. First is that the activity is freely entered into. Second, that it is self-determining. Imagination is the third key. Fourth, that it is valued primarily because it is enjoyable. And last, that there is a mindset of utter absorption. Heading out into the rain with an umbrella for the sole purpose of no purpose fits this description. A little closer to home, our very own UUFC youngsters, JB and Joachim, shared their insights on play. You do it because it's fun and it helps you relax. The best is when you play with lots of friends on toys like Hot Wheels or train sets, because you can control them and your friends can too. Big boys play with smart toys like train sets, and you have to think about what you're doing. You have to have a plan. Uh-oh. I think I detected a hint of structure. Nevertheless, can you hear the joy in that description of play? I can. For adults, the notion that we're allowed to or need to set aside the time to play can be caught up in a finely woven net of responsibility and duty. Throw in a worldwide pandemic, and the resulting level of play probability becomes even trickier. Whether we're reacting to personal, local, national, or global stressors, it's easy to get overwhelmed. Somewhere in late March, with COVID-19 creating disjointed and jagged edges to how I lived my life, I lost my sense of humor, and with it, the notion of engaging in anything fun. Seriously, how did enjoyment fit into this picture? For many of us, the pandemic is wildly different than other serious matters in that it has changed how we interact with each other. From hugs and handshakes to conversation and group get-togethers, there are a lot of limitations if we're to have any chance to stay healthy and to give family, friends, and anyone near a chance of staying healthy as well. By mid-April, I was bottoming out in serious purpose. If I wasn't sewing surgical face masks, it wasn't helping those on the front lines of the fight, and so I was at it night and day. Then came the destructive tornadoes through Oconee and Pickens counties, and there went the last of my perceived ability to lighten up on occasion. Here is the perfect storm, the metaphorical rain that has washed away my sense of centeredness, of balance, perhaps for you as well. When I read Martha Dallas's call to reflection on the online resource worship web, I gave her words some thought. She wrote, "Imagine with me for a moment things that you love about life, things that you love about being alive." I could feel her suggesting rather loudly that I reset my thinking and strip back to the basics. And that's where I re-encountered this notion that play had no place in such serious times. So while it might be helpful or useful to have a talent to play or to understand what makes the best kind of play, choosing to play, especially in times of chaos and uncertainty, requires purposeful intent. Back in the 1980s, I was in the Navy, and far from everything I knew well, a somewhat unsettling experience in so many ways. It was during that phase of my life that I bought my first motorcycle. And since there weren't many women riding their own bike back then, I was on my own. That's when I conjured up the get lost game. It was simple. I'd ride my motorcycle for 3 hours in any direction, stop for lunch, check a map to determine where I was. Remember, there were no smartphones back then, and head home. It was pure joy of self-determination, rambling down the road that caught my eye, never needing to label the experience interesting or not, enjoying the sensation of riding with the wind on my body and letting go of the daily tasks of life. This is the closest I've ever gotten as an adult to the ideal of play being play. Looking back, I can see that the get lost game created a balance to my more rigid life of military service. And isn't that how I regard the new normal imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic? Rigid to some extent. Melanie Davis, another worship web resource, notes that under the right circumstances, playing with fire is a delight. She continues by asking us to imagine being gathered around a fire pit and letting our spirit take us where it wants to go, singing, dancing, or maybe roasting a marshmallow or two. I recently was given the opportunity to do this. I stuck with weenie and marshmallow roasting and sharing in conversation. So if play can be jump-started with a joyful intent, I looked up some synonyms for the word play. Carouse, cavort, frolic, rejoice, revel, romp, amuse oneself, carry on, cut up, horse around, kick up your heels, let go, let loose, let one's hair down, and finally, make merry. I love that last one. Make merry. It's true that we have a lot more to think through to get together in person if we're even comfortable contemplating that. But what's percolating to the top of my thinking is that even if situations are not perfect or somewhat distant from what we formerly labeled normal, play is still possible. Earlier, we heard Paula Husenfeld play This Little Light of Mine. It is a gospel song originally written for children in the 1920s by Harry Dixon Lowes, but over the years, it has come to mean many things to many people. To me, in this moment in time, I think about how stifling things can feel, but there at the edges, a bit of my light wants to shine through. Not only wants to, but has to. JB and Joachim offer us a simple but truly profound way of thinking about playing in all types of weather. Yes, you can play when people are hurting, but you need to remember to take the time to make them feel better and let them know you love them. The benediction today is reading number 681 adapted from Gaelic runes. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the infinite peace to you.